All right. Share my screen here.
I think we lost Amanda.
Well, then we'll wait for her to come back. And I will.
Luckily, it should only take like 15 minutes, so that'll be very exciting since I just ran through it. All right, guys.
There we go. All yours, Amanda.
Thank you. I'm sorry for the tech issues, ladies. Thank you for bearing with me. So, thank you for joining tonight for this information session about CSW 68. So it's really about what is Commission on the Status of Women, why would you might perhaps want to get involved, what does it mean if you want to be a delegate for BPW Canada, all those kind of things. So I'm going to give kind of a very high-level overview of what is the Commission on the Status of Women, kind of what makes up those 2 weeks that happen each year in New York. And then we'll talk a little bit about kind of more granularly, what does it mean from the perspective of being a delegate for BPW Canada. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Amanda Devison, and I serve on the national board as vice president of UNCSW. Locally, I am part of the BPW Greater Moncton Club, located in New Brunswick, out east. I'm the immediate past president. I was president, first VP, treasurer. I've been a member since 2014. My day job is in commercial banking with Royal Bank. So that's a little bit about who I am. So let's talk a little bit about CSW itself. So what is the Commission on the Status of Women? So the reason why we're all here tonight. So the Commission on the Status of Women is the principal global intergovernmental body that's exclusively dedicated to the promotion of gender equality and the empowerment of women. A functional commission of the Economic and Social Council, also known as ECOSOC. It was established in 1946. The CSW is instrumental in promoting women's rights, documenting the reality of women's lives throughout the world, and shaping global standards on gender equality and the empowerment of women. In 1996, ECOSOC expanded the Commission's mandate and decided that it should take a leading role in monitoring and reviewing progress and problems in the implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. That particular platform is a key global policy document on gender equality. And they also wanted the Commission to be involved in mainstreaming a gender perspective on UN activities. So each year there's an annual session. The Commission on the Status of Women happens every year. This year is the 68th annual session. It's the biggest gathering of gender equality advocates in the world. The annual session of the Commission convenes ministers, high-level government officials, and civil society representatives at the United Nations in New York for 2 weeks in March to discuss progress, set policies, identify challenges, and set global standards on gender equality and the rights of women and girls. So during the 2-week session, representatives of UN member states, civil society organizations, and UN entities gather at UN headquarters in New York. They discuss the progress and gaps in the implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform of Action, as well as emerging issues that affect gender equality and the empowerment of women. So this year, the priority theme is accelerating the achievement of gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls by addressing poverty and strengthening institutions and financing with a gender perspective. And the review theme is social protection systems, access to public service, and sustainable infrastructure for gender equality and the empowerment of women and girls. And that's from the agreed conclusion documents from CSW 63. So every 5 years, they require the member states to provide an update on the progress their country has made on the agreed conclusions document from that particular theme. So the CSW 63 session is what the review theme is for this year. So it all starts with the zero draft document. So as you can see, this is a snapshot from last year. It came out early February. So this is what kind of starts it all. It starts pretty early on, and it's the initial zero draft document is created by the CSW committee and distributed to the member states for discussion. It is revised over and over and over and over and over again over that 2-week period of the Commission on the Status of Women. The member states discuss changes to strengthen, reduce, alter the document to be able to agree with the final conclusion. In CSW's history, the document has only ever not come to an agreement twice. The final document is ratified by all member states and adopted by those countries. And the review theme require member states to report on how the document was adopted and the changes their countries made in the last 5 years. So once they come to this conclusion, so at the goal of the end of the Commission of the Status of Women, the end of the 2 weeks, they want to result in the outcome document called the Agreed Conclusions. So this is for action by the governments and other stakeholders, including the United Nations system, national human rights institutions, civil society, private sector, employer organizations, trade unions, media, among other actors. So the member states are agreeing on further actions to accelerate the progress and promote women's enjoyment of their rights in political, economic, and social fields. The outcomes and recommendations of each session form the agreed conclusions document, which is forwarded to ECOSOC for follow-up. So when you think of the Commission on the Status of Women, there's kind of 3 unique parts that seem to happen that make up the whole event. So what I was just talking about with the different member states, when you think of, if you think of any time you've seen the UN on the news or somebody, you know, making a speech there, it's usually in that big room, the General Assembly Hall. You think of the gold wall and all the member states sitting at those tables with the microphones and their little country in front of them. So that's the main hall. That's where the member states and the UN agencies sit, and that's where they give their statements and they kind of have the debate throughout the session. So as a delegate, you can sit in that room and you can have, there's earpieces you can listen to, so that as people are speaking different languages, it can translate to your language of preference as well. And you can kind of hear what are the different countries saying about the theme and what their country plans to do in support of that theme, etc. So that happens in kind of the big main room on the UN premises. Then there's also side events that happen. So in conjunction with the session, the member states and the UN agencies will collaborate with civil society organizations, and they'll hold hundreds of side events on the UN premises as well. And they'll share information, advocate and challenge perceptions, and influence policy dialogues on gender equality. So in addition to that large hall on the UN property, there are convention and conference buildings. So that's where all these side events would take place. So again, you have to be a delegate to access those because you need the pass to get onto the UN premises. So the third piece of Commission on the Status of Women is parallel events. So these ones are open to the public. They're free of charge. They're put together by civil society organizations. We as BPW Canada hosted one last year as well. And so they happen off premises. There was ones last year, ours happened at the Church Center, which is right across the street from the UN. There were other ones at Salvation Army, which is a little bit farther away, but they happen on premises across New York. And there are, again, a variety of different topics and issues that happen. It happens the same time as CSW, so again, parallel, because it's happening at the same time, and it's kind of focused on similar issues. So the program, side events and parallel events provide an excellent opportunity for member states, UN entities, and NGOs to discuss themes of the Commission and other critical gender equality issues. So permanent missions and United Nations entities hold side events on UN premises during CSW, and the parallel events are organized by NGOs and coordinated by the NGO CSW New York organization. So I feel like I'm still trying to wrap my mind a bit around this a little bit. So I took this from the NGO CSW New York website, and it really tries to explain the difference between what they do and what the UN CSW does. So when you think of NGO CSW form, it's civil society gathering parallel to the UN CSW and outside of the UN headquarters. It's organized by NGO CSW New York, which is a civil society organization itself. They host virtual and in-person parallel events and other civil society-led events and activities. They make recommendations that are prepared by civil society that they would like to see included in the outcome document. And again, it's free and open to the public. So when COVID hit, they did all virtual and they found it very successful. Last year, they did a hybrid, so you could be in person, and the majority of their meetings also continued online. And again, you don't have to be a delegate for those ones. So if this is something you want to try to get to know a little bit more, perhaps before you consider being a delegate, this is a great way to do it. You sign up on the NGO CSW New York website. There's literally hundreds and hundreds of different events. Any topic you could think of when it comes to women is on there, and you could sign up, happening in lots of different time zones though, because since they are virtual, there's different countries hosting them as well. And it just gives you a really great idea of the different types of discussions that go on. So this is a great way to be involved. If you're not quite sure you want to make the commitment to go to New York and be a delegate. When you think of UNCSW, so that's the official United Nations Commission at the UN headquarters. It's coordinated by UN Women, which is a UN agency. So they host the official side events that are organized by UN agencies, member states, and CSOs. The outcome document is negotiated by member states, and only ECOSOC accredited organizations can officially register. So you have to have status and be a delegate and get a UN pass to kind of participate in the side events or to kind of observe what's happening in the hall with the member states. So delegate status. So how does an organization go about getting delegate status so that they can send a delegation to CSW? So all of that is actually facilitated through UN Women. So they facilitate the participation of non-government organizations in the sessions of CSW, and the NGOs that are accredited to and in good standing with ECOSOC, they may designate representatives. It's normally capped at 20 to attend the annual session of CSW. So this is quite the process to go through. It takes a very long time to kind of submit all the information, have it reviewed, and get your actual approval. And there's continued reporting obligations on the organization to keep that standing. So it's not kind of a one and done. You also have an obligation to submit reporting to let them know, okay, what has your organization done to help progress the agreed conclusions and women's rights in order to continue to show your participation and how you're actually continuing to drive the overall agenda of CSW. So it is a big commitment for sure. And obviously we were very excited once BPW Canada was able to have that status and participate in CSW. So NGOs that are accredited to and in good standing with ECOSOC can contribute to the annual sessions of CSW. Non-governmental, non-profit, public, or voluntary organizations may formally contribute to the work of the United Nations after being granted consultative status with ECOSOC. These accredited organizations may participate in meetings of the Council and its subsidiary bodies, including functional commissions. NGOs with consultative status with ECOSOC may submit written statements on the thematic issues considered at CSW. You can submit one individual statement as an organization, and I'm happy to say we, as BPW Canada, have submitted a written statement for this year for CSW 68. So that's really, really exciting. It's our first written statement that we've submitted as an organization. In addition, you can actually sign on to joint statements. So there's other organizations out there that mirror a lot of what we're doing, and they'll send out their statements beforehand. And if we're in agreement, we can say, yes, we want to co-sign onto that statement. So we've done that as well with a couple to help strengthen the overall message and kind of show that there's multiple organizations behind what it is they're talking about in their statement. So subject to time availability, oral statements may be delivered during the general discussion by a limited number of NGOs in consultative status with ECOSOC. Preference is given to NGOs speaking about the priority theme or review theme, and to NGOs speaking on behalf of groups or organizations, caucuses, or coalitions. So I believe BPW International did speak, make a verbal statement at last year's session. So again, there's a limited number of those opportunities, and it is time permitting. So even if you know, kind of get the thumbs up that you can, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that you will, based on what's happening at the CSW. A limited number of NGOs with consultative status with ECOSOC may be able to make oral interventions during interactive panels and subject to time availability. The interventions must be focused on the theme of the panel and not on other issues. And also, if you were to do that, and same with the statement you'd make, it's on behalf of the organization. Like, you're not there as an individual, you're there as part of the organization with the status. So any statements you would make or interventions would be all from on behalf of your organization. So in this case, BPW Canada. So here it just kind of gives us some bullet points of the things you can do. Talks about the zero draft document as well. We talked a bit about what that was and the fact that it gets revised a number of times. So a lot of governments will have what are called like rapid response teams. So we have reached out to the Government of Canada through WAGE, because they send a delegation as well, and asked to be on their rapid response team for CSW 68. And so what that means is whenever there's a revision of the zero draft document that comes out, they send out an email to all the people on the response team. Those organizations can huddle around. And if we have feedback we want to give, insights we want to give about the changes, we can do it at that time. You have to back it up with previously agreed to information from the UN, right? Because at the end of the day, these member states are part of the UN, so they've agreed to any other previous resolutions and things like that. So you kind of back it up with previous decisions made at the UN in order to support and strengthen why you think something should be left in or wording should be a certain way. Because at the end of the day, the CSW member states are made up of countries on a spectrum of progress as relates to women, right? So you have some very progressive countries that are really trying to really push it so it includes women and girls in all of their diversity and not just the standard definition of women and girls from a gender lens. And you have other countries that, don't believe as heavily in women's rights and think women serve a certain role in that country. And so they're not as comfortable with some of that progressive language. So there's constantly that negotiation that's going on between how liberal and progressive the wording is in the document, because if it gets to the agreed conclusion stage and it's included, all those member states are now obligated to move their countries in that direction. So that's why you see so many revisions, because you have the progressive countries pushing for more progressive rights, more encompassing rights, and you have some of the less progressive countries pushing to want it to be way broader and more vague, I guess, or less all encompassing in what that wording looks like. So there's also tons of informal discussions. Thousands of people attend CSW from across the world. So you get to have all kinds of conversations with different organizations to get an insight as to what is it the lives of women and girls like across the world. And again, that ties in the same thing with the networking. So there's different events. The government of Canada held a networking event last year, a reception. And Shan, can I get you to mute your line? There's a lot of noise coming through.
Sorry.
Thank you. And then that ties into networking. So the government of Canada did hold a reception last year. So a lot of the different organizations that were attending there from Canada, the civil society organizations, were able to come together and meet under the same roof and chat a bit with each other and with the government, the delegation from the government of Canada itself. So that was a really great event as well. And then obviously with the agreed conclusion documents, things we can do as an organization is kind of have our resolutions can be tied into the agreed conclusions document. So we know Canada is a member state of the UN. The agreed conclusions is something they're agreeing to do to progress the lives of women and girls. So when we submit our resolutions, we can tie it into that agreed conclusions document to say, this is how it aligns. This is why this should be something that the government does. And again, that ties into that government accountability. So that kind of wraps the formal part. I did want to kind of informally discuss, okay, so what does it mean if you wanted to be a delegate? So we're going to end up doing a call for delegates. I'm going to look to have it either beginning or middle of November. We'll do a call for people who are interested in being delegates on behalf of BPW Canada. So again, the maximum amount of people that can attend are 20. Preference is given to if you can be there physically. Obviously, the ideal scenario is that you're there physically. We look to be there the first week of March. We don't stay for the 2 weeks. The costs would be on your own. So that's why it's a big consideration. We're talking about New York City. It's not a cheap place to stay for sure. Normally the weekend before, so the Friday and Saturday before CSW starts, BPW International also holds a leaders summit. So that's something separate, but a lot of people that are attending as delegates will go to that as well. That's a whole other separate cost that's involved. And then Sunday night, they also host a dinner. So that's again, another cost that's involved. You're not obligated to attend those things. It's more of just if you wanted to know if there's other things you want to do to get to know more BPW sisters and chat with them and have like a lot of us made a lot of friends, and it was a really great experience. But you're not obligated. If you are a delegate, you're not obligated to attend these other things because we're mindful of people's budgets. BPW International does also negotiate a fixed rate with one of the hotels that's nearby. It's walkable to the UN. They tend to come in really, really late though. Like we're always like waiting for that minute for when they kind of give that information. Again, no obligation to stay at that hotel. If you have status with a certain hotel and there's a lot of them nearby, we're right down there. There's tons of hotels. You can certainly stay somewhere else. A lot of people also will partner up with other people so you can split the cost of a room so that it's not all entirely on you to kind of carry that cost. So I will do a call out. You'll be able to submit an application. You have to be a member in good standing. So essentially you have to be a BPW member, have paid your dues, all that kind of stuff. And if you can be in person, there is preference. You can submit if you want to be attend virtually, because I assume it'll be hybrid as well as it was last year. We have no reason to believe it wouldn't be again this year, but just recognize if we get 20 people that are willing to be there in person, preference is going to be given to boots on the ground, right? Because you can have those informal conversations. You can be part of that zero draft document conversation, all that kind of stuff that's happening in that bubble is what we're trying to really work towards. So we would ask for submissions. Once we have them, we have a committee that will review them. The last number of years we've only ever gotten 20. So we haven't had to kind of actually make any cuts. But I feel like as we kind of go along with this and build up our presence and people get familiar with what it is, we know eventually there'll be more of a process involved of determining who will be going on behalf of the club. Those people will get contacted. We'll have training sessions. So we'll show you how do you submit, because you also have to register on the UN official site. And you have to put your passport information in there. You have to have a headshot, all that kind of stuff, because you actually get a badge. If you don't have a badge, they're not letting you in. It's similar to airport security. You actually put your bags through a thing, you walk through it's a whole thing. So you have to have that badge. You have to coordinate, get there early because there's giant lineups, again, thousands of people, right? So you're trying to get your badge to get onto the premises. So we would have a training session about how do you fill it out in the website so that we can actually approve you, because there's a deadline for us as an organization to say, these are the people that are coming and here's their relevant information. Then we'd also have kind of a training session of a little bit more of like, the nuances of CSW, of being there, like what's it like being mindful of the emotional roller coaster and trying to figure out how many events are too many events, or how do you choose events, or all that kind of stuff, or how do we make sure not all 20 of us are going to the same event, and deciding who's really aligned. It really usually with everyone has different interests and different professions as well, so it's usually pretty good to split people up. But then it becomes a discussion too of, okay, who's going to attend? If we only get 2 tickets to the government reception, who's going to go on behalf of that, or different things like that. So we have training sessions, so you'd be kind of prepared, and there's lots of opportunity to ask questions as well. So the goal would be, if you're there, that you are building your own calendar. So sometimes there'll be things like, if BPW International wants to have a meeting, we'll recommend that you attend it because you get to meet some other BPW sisters. But I don't hand you a schedule and say, here's your stuff. You have to invest the time to go through the side events, go through the parallel events, determine what it is you want to attend, what do you want to sign up for. And it's a mix between physically being there, and some of us, with the virtual ones, you're sitting in front of your laptop, either in the lobby or at the UN, in the lobby of the UN, or in your hotel room to attend those in-betweens. Lots of running back and forth into like those areas that you're interested in, but you would be responsible to kind of build your agenda and into what you wanted to participate in. You would be responsible to submit reports. They're very short, they're bullet point. It's like a 1-pager. Sometimes it goes into 2, depending on what it is you want to give feedback on. It's literally the title of the event, the key speakers from the event, what were your takeaways, and what are the takeaways that BPW Canada should have. So sometimes you're going to be attending an event that's about a completely different country, but if you apply the lens of Canada to that event and say, like, what is it we can make sure the government of Canada is doing about this type of situation, right? So for example, I attended an event that it was about women in Afghanistan, and how when the Taliban is ruling, they can't get an education and all that is interrupted. And so my takeaway for BPW Canada on that is, what is the Canadian government doing for immigrant women that come to Canada from Afghanistan who have no education and no work experience? Like, what are we doing to support those women? So it's about, in addition to hearing the messages they're trying to deliver to us, it's about, okay, how can we flip it so that we can hold the government of Canada accountable to kind of support some of these things that are happening. So sometimes it's literally about, you need to support this country because if they're one of our allies, then it's literally a very direct tie of, we need to support this country with XYZ. But other times it's more roundabout of, okay, what does that mean from a Canadian perspective? So there would be reports. So each event you attend, you can do them throughout. Like, a lot of us did them during the actual CSW, especially if they're virtual online, you can have it open and you can be making your bullet points while the event's happening. You save it and send it in. That becomes part of our final summary report. I did do one for CSW 67. If you're interested, you can send me an email and I can send you a copy. We're looking to have it put on our BPW Canada website so people can just access it there, but it isn't up yet. So, but it'll give you an idea of why those reports are important, because it kind of brings about this document that we can also partner with other organizations, because we're volunteer driven. We don't have, people working full time as BPW Canada, but there's plenty of organizations working for women's equality that have full-time staff. And if we can partner with them and share this report and share the knowledge that we've gained being at CSW, and they can actually take it and accelerate it by taking the material we've brought back, then that could be a really powerful tool, right? Like, it's about connecting with other organizations that can then take this to the next level on top of us doing our resolutions. But how can we really bring this to life across Canada? So, and there'd be a debrief session as well. And so there's a debrief session on giving feedback. Okay, like what went well, what didn't go well, what would you like to see us do differently next time? Because we're still new at this, especially being on the ground. We got our status during COVID. So last year was the first time we were boots on the ground. So we're open to what is, like, my role is brand new. So like, what should the VP UNCSW be doing? What is it we should make sure happens when we are there in New York? So all that kind of stuff, you can help shape what this looks like as we move forward. Because we know there's different perspectives and people have different ideas of what it could look like. So that's kind of an overview of what all that means. So does anyone have any questions? I'm going to drink some tea because I just talked a lot.
I got one.
Sure, Darlene.
So what you're saying, the 20, that means that PBW Canada could have 20 delegates.
Yes, we do have 20 delegates. That's where, with
Okay.
our status, we're allowed to send up to 20 people.
Okay, so each country, it's different, the number of delegates based on their status.
No,
Oh.
it's based on the status you get with EcoSoft. There's general status and special status. We have special status and that gives us 20. I don't know what the other one gives you, but any organization from across the world, if they have the same status as us, they all have 20.
Okay, got it. We're special. Okay.
We are special.
I think we're special because special is contained to one country. And the general, like BPW International, has the other status. They're not as special as we are because they're international. So some organizations like Seroptimus and things like that are internationals, and with us, we're contained to one country. But
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
yeah, but I believe it's still 20 because, BPW International has 20 for all the members in 113
Yes.
countries.
Yeah.
And now we have our own. So.
And that was a thing, like, kind of evolved of this was because, BPW International had it, but it was so hard. There's 20, if we're in over 100 countries, you have only 20 spots. So it's very cool, and I'm very excited that BPW Canada went through the process to get status, because now we can get 20 of us from our specific country to kind of go our club nationally. So that gives us a lot more opportunity to do that. Eleni, if that's incorrect of how you pronounce it.
No. Perfect. Sorry. I wanted to know sort of the process for the resolutions. Have we already started that process? Are those resolutions going to be discussed? Obviously, I would think they would be discussed prior. And do we prioritize certain resolutions over others? What's the process is what I'm asking.
The resolutions themselves, that's more of our process for our AGM and our convention. So it's Colleen is the VP for our resolution. So she does the call when we have resolutions across the country that people want to submit. We did have one this year that actually did reference CSW 67, the agreed conclusions document. So, but it's kind of separate. So it's not tied in directly with CSW. It's more of our usual resolutions process as a club.
I just meant, do we take resolutions to the floor of the UN?
No.
No. Okay,
No.
That's what I
No.
wanted to know.
When we do
vote
resolutions
while we're there?
no, we're not a member state, so we don't get direct
Okay.
participation in things on the floor. So it's more of, you can observe the member states as they're the ones that get to speak and kind of talk about their piece, and they're the ones debating the zero draft document. Our involvement with that process is if you're on the rapid response team, like the government of Canada would email us and say, here's the latest update, here's the specific areas that we're being asked to look at. And if we have documentation to back up why it needs to be more progressive in language, or why we don't want the wording to change, we would provide that to them. So they, as the government delegation, because they're the member state, they would be the one that would be in the room debating on our behalf. We're kind of helping support the government in that piece.
But we do have input. Okay, that's good to know. Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And if I can just add, Amanda, along with asking to be on the rapid response team, we've also asked to meet with them in person
Yes.
while we're in New York with their delegation. So they'll have a delegation there. So, it's very helpful to have that connection, get that connection ahead of time so that we can meet with them there while the action's going on.
Yes. Yeah. Darlene, do you have a new question, or is this an old hand?
No, it's a new question because I used the real hand the last time, but following the rules. So a delegate is only appointed for one session. You have to renew each time, the delegate? Okay.
Yeah. So we have status, like as long as we keep it and we do our reporting and all that stuff. But in terms of a delegate, it's each year we do a call for delegates and people submit their desire to be considered as a delegate, and we would choose 20 people each year. So
Each
obviously the VP CSW, I get to go. So I'm consistent, but it could be 20 different people. There could be a couple people it depends on how many people we get to come in, because obviously if we get tons of people, we would look to kind of change it up, because it's a very unique opportunity. You don't always get to go to the United Nations. So we'd want to give our members that opportunity, as many members as possible. So we ask for things like, people that are willing to be there in person. Are they serving in a leadership role of some capacity at their club currently? Because obviously if they're in that leadership capacity, they're going to bring that message back and kind of help spread that across their club. So there are those little markers of preference, but there could be overlap. Some years there is, and some years there's not. We haven't had the floodgates open yet. I expect we will at some point, where there's all kinds of people, and that'll give us more opportunity to kind of spread the love. But that is something we'd want to do is make sure, especially too, like concentrations of clubs, right? Like, do we have representation from east to west? Because again, you want that message to get out there. So we don't want it to all be centralized in one specific area of the country either. So we're mindful of the different variables and making sure we kind of mix it up as we go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Yeah. Here.
She has her hand up. So
Oh, sorry. Couldn't see it.
Um,
The corner of the screen, it like blended in with your background.
Yes, it is. I have a question that may seem very evident, but I've learned to ask them just the same. These, having worked in the international world for quite a few years, do we have a mandate or an agenda before coming in outside of our general strategy when we do the training? Is there a specific message, or is it within knowing that there's a framework within the UN, and there's a theme and there's a priority and there's a review theme also, when I looked it up, is there something that because any delegate would not come with their own agenda. It's about
No. Yeah.
PW. So is there guidance of
Yeah.
how
So
to listen, where to listen? Because we wouldn't go to the same panels or to the same meetings because of the what we would want to attain or the objective we'd want to have.
yeah, so again, that's evolving. So like last year, I gave everyone speaking points about BPW Canada. So if they were networking and having informal conversations, they had kind of their elevator speech of who we are and what we're trying to achieve as an organization. But this year, we're also going to have the added bonus of having done a written statement, right? Specific to the priority theme. So all the delegates will have access to that. It's not extensive. It's like 800 words. So it's not like you're not looking at like an encyclopedia you have to memorize, but that'll tell you that we as an organization, this is what we believe the member states need to focus on. And so it gives you those key ideas that
Mhm.
we as an organization think need to be form the focus. So that'll give you point. And if there's one specific one that you're really passionate about, you can absolutely focus on that one, because the more passionate you are about it, the more you're going to speak up and be involved versus trying to remember if there's, I can't remember how many there are, 6 or whatever that the organization has. So you can really narrow your focus if you want, and that can really help you formulate kind of where your comfort zone is, or what you're kind of looking for when you're hearing some member states speak, or you know, the civil society organizations, or if the ones that have questions, it could help you formulate, if you wanted to ask a question, what you want to ask around. So there will be some, it won't be like, again, it won't be a dictated, here's what you have to say, but it'll be like, here's some stuff to kind of, you know, have enough for you to be dangerous to kind of go out there and feel like you could participate.
Like a framework, you know, the
Yes.
guiding framework. Okay, thank you.
Yes. You're welcome. Anybody else?
I guess too, just to go along with Amanda about the dates, it is 2 weeks, and if the only time you were available was the second week, that still would be okay,
Yes.
you know? While the majority of us are there the first week, just because, you know, you go for the leaders summit at the beginning and you kind of stay, right? And so on. But if someone wanted to go the second week, that's perfectly fine too, because there'll still be lots going on at that point in time and opportunities.
Yeah, we did have a couple people last year who they came towards the end of the week. So I think it was a Thursday they might have arrived. So we had a couple of days of overlap, but there was a group of us there for the first week, and then there was a couple of people who were there for the second week. So you won't be you know, we won't ball up your application and throw it in the bin because you can only be there the second week. So if there's a time frame in there that you're able to attend, like, certainly feel free to submit your application. Helen.
Thank you. It sounds fascinating and most interesting. I imagine that you'll be telling us how to apply if we are interested in this marvelous adventure.
Absolutely. So I'm hoping to, like, if you're not signed up to the BPW Canada newsletter, please do. Like, that's how the call is going to go out. It'll go out to the newsletter. It'll end up being on the website as well, but there'll be a way to apply online. We're going to do it. We did it online last year, and it was a lot easier than people printing a paper and trying to scan it and this thing. So it'll be an online format that you'll submit your application through, and it'll probably be like a 2-week window that it'll be open. My goal is either the beginning to mid-November for that window to be open, so that we can get everybody's applications in, go through them, pick our 20 people and let them know, and ideally have that first session before Christmas to tell people, okay, here's the site you need to go to actually submit your UN part as well. So it's going to kind of happen fast and furious. But yes, the initial kind of call for delegates will go through the BPW Canada mailing list. Anybody else?
I've just added a couple websites. One is for UNCSW, so you can go in and have a look, and there's information there that may help, as well as the NGOCSW site. So there's their newsletters there. There's a lot of information, and the report is on the members page.
Oh, is
that
it?
Amanda did, yeah.
Oh,
So
sweet.
under CSW 67. So I've put the link here for you too.
Awesome. I wasn't sure. I looked the other day and it wasn't up yet, so I didn't think it made it yet, but that's awesome. Okay. Just jotting down everybody's name here before everybody takes off. Any other questions? Thank you so much, especially for sticking it out after my crazy tech issues where I presented to my cats and then I got to come back and present to you guys.
So as long as we can find the recording in the clouds.
It's in the
It'll be-
cloud. It's in the
It'll
cloud.
be posted again
someone
on
restart
a
the
new
recording?
CSW 68 site once we get that.
Yeah, Karen did. If you look in the upper left-hand corner, it says recording.
Oh,
So
yes, it is.
I'm
yeah.
going to stop recording now.
Well, thank you very much.